Hey everybody, welcome back to another movie review. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. It's a little bit late, pushing past 10:30 at this point, so hopefully this review will be short, because I don't know if I really have a whole lot to say on this review, but we'll see where this goes. But me and the family went out to check this movie out, and we're back, and I'm here to give you guys my thoughts. So that movie that we just got back from seeing was Toy Story 5, which was directed by Andrew Stanton, who has worked with Pixar in the past, namely with movies like WALL-E, which I absolutely love. And I believe he directed Monsters, Inc., or I believe he's in relation to Monsters, Inc. I could be totally wrong about that. But this is, of course, the fifth in the Toy Story series. Of course, the series now being around for well over 30 years at this point, which shocks me. We looked it up when we were driving home. It was like, yeah, this series has been around for almost 30 years. That's insane. But here we are now with the fifth film. And this is now following a different protagonist this time. It is not Woody this time. It is now Jessie. Jessie now takes center stage in this, and she is trying to manage everything in Bonnie's house, because if you remember in the events of Toy Story 4, Woody decides to go off on his own way, as the toys, now try to adjust within, Jessie's new leadership, and trying to adjust to also the new age of digital, the digital age that is upon them. So technology is now taking over, specifically these what they call lily pads, these laptops and all the really little iPads sort of stuff. And all the kids are like kind of hanging and playing with them and stuff like that. And Bonnie gets a hold of one of them. And she plays with these in the hopes to socialize, because she is having trouble socializing and connecting with a lot of people. And the toys aren't exactly helping her, or at least she's having, contentions with how she playing with toys and stuff like that. So she starts to become more acclimated and more interested in that of the iPad and or the lily pad. And the toys rebel, and they want to, find some kind of common ground. And it basically becomes that of toys versus tech, as the, kind of the pitch was for this movie. And at the same time, a revisiting of old wounds and, seeing where new beginnings can be discovered, or new understandings to said purpose of making a child happy can be found, in past relations with other owners. In this case being Jessie and her own backstories. So obviously the Toy Story franchise is beloved. Many people have grown up on Toy Story, and lots of kids nowadays still really like Toy Story. And I really enjoy the Toy Story series. I've enjoyed all the movies. I really enjoyed the fourth film. I think that they really found a way to further that story, but also to find, I think, a really, really great way to just leave things. So when they said that they were doing another movie, I understood why, because financially, these movies make all the money. They make billions of dollars. So it doesn't shock me at all that another movie is here. And it wouldn't shock me if another movie comes out in the future, because I'm expecting this to also do crazy numbers. But it's two times now where we have been revisiting the series where it really was done. The fourth movie, people had their trepidations because the third film really did end the story in a way, and now we're off with a new owner, and we're no longer with Andy, so it's like, what are we gonna do? And the fourth film, I felt like really, really brought things to a proper conclusion, not just for the toys, but specifically with our main protagonist, specifically that of Woody. So and I really, really like how they shaped that narrative of, ultimately trying to grow out of being specific purpose and, forging your own path. I thought it was a really, really nice way to send off the characters in a way. So going into this, what are they going to do? And that was my biggest question, going into this, was what are they going to do? And ultimately what you get from this is about friendships, and about how one builds friendships, and the impact, of of that at a very young age. How one forges relations, how one forges meaning. Those are very specific things that the film wants to touch on. And the impact of relating, and the impact to relatability. In the cases of certain characters, it's playing with their toys, and being creating stories and being imaginative. For others, it's dipping into the technological age, being more acclimated to that of iPads and phones and all that sort of stuff. And some people just naturally just mature out of it, and they just go off to do other things. So it's but it's at the core of it. It's about friendship and about finding that friendship, finding that genuine connection in the modern technological age, where such connections are very, very thin and not as genuine. And for that, I think it's an interesting and a very thoughtful message. And I think to speak positively for a minute, I think that, as I always say about each of these films, the animation here is just gorgeous. I think that they really have topped themselves with this one. Just looking at the grass, looking at the trees, looking at the water, all the little things here. It just looks so good. And watching it on the big screen, in many ways was a treat, because you just get to see all those details just presented to their fullest, and it just was really, really eye-catching in that regard. Um, and I think that there are moments of resonance. With each of these movies, there's obviously a pull to the heart. And I've teared up and cried at many points with many of these movies. Specifically, the last film, it got me a lot. Because I felt that the way that the narrative was being built was so earnest, and therefore the resonance just was felt so much. So, and in cases like this, I did find myself, getting emotional, but not to the extent of what I felt in the fourth movie. So, but, however, I think that what this film suffers from, largely, in my opinion, is spreading its seed much too wide. Because to its core, it is Jesse's story, right? This is no longer Woody's story. Woody and Buzz are there, but they're not the main focus. This is Jesse's story, and I have no problem with that. I know some people may have issues with that, because really up to this point, it has been Woody and Buzz's story. So handing it off to someone else, I get where people might feel a little trepidatious about that. I don't find any issues with that personally, because I think that her story, and what is presented here is interesting. The problem with that story is that it's splitting itself into three different plot lines. One of which involves, as you've been seeing in the trailers, a bunch of Buzz Lightyears. Another is Woody and Buzz. And then the main one is about Jesse. And I feel as though that spreading yourself much too wide actually created for a lot of hollowness and a lot of thin layers. And if you don't get that sense of depth that I feel that Toy Story brings a lot of, and that richness and emotion, with a lot of these movies, you just feel the impact, absolutely. And in the case of this, because of how much they're spreading themselves so wide, you're left without much, in terms of that emotional impact. At times it's there, but it's not as powerful as felt as previously, because of having to contend with these three plot lines, and having to find that common ground, because it's hard to figure out with two out of three of these storylines shouldn't exist. Jesse's story should have been just the only story. Everything else didn't need to be there, in my opinion. Like, the whole Buzz Lightyear thing doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, they try to relate it to the plot, but it's very thin again, because we don't get a lot of time to develop that idea. Same thing with Woody and Buzz. I mean, yeah, it's nice to hear Tom Hanks and Tim Allen doing what they do, and they don't sound, too old, or, they don't sound like they've aged out of their roles. They sound fine still. But they're not given much to do, except just chasing after the main plot line, which we should be following to begin with, which is Jesse's story. And Jesse's story is really where I feel is the heart of the story lies, and I just feel like we kind of get away from that at some point because of our need to split the difference into three. And I just don't think that it needed to. I feel like if you had just focused purely on Jesse's story, I feel like then we would have had something more worthwhile and more genuine. Because as it stands, it's very, on one level, very fast paced, and I just feel as though it was another detriment to the film in terms of building resonance and emotion. But for another, it is just, again, much too stretched out. Much too just playing too many things at once, too many cooks in the kitchen to some regard. Whereas it needed to have only one specific person there managing it, or one specific storyline to really be the thing that we watch play out. And I feel in this case, having three things happening at once was not the solution here, as much as focusing more so on what Jesse's story is, and being that the main thing to hold on to. But as it stands, you have three storylines, and about two of them just don't need to exist. It is one story, but it's being split into three, and I feel as though that judgment isn't as sound, in my opinion. So, in my opinion, anyway, I feel it is the weakest of the five, and I feel also in terms of its purpose, I think that there is a idea there. I'm not going to take that away from it. I think that there is an idea. I think that it's a genuine idea. But in terms of how it is being executed, and the idea of doing three different storylines at once, I just don't think it was really that. It's not well fleshed out, and also I just don't think it's well thought out, in my personal opinion. So those are my thoughts on Toy Story 5. I think it's okay. I don't hate it. I mean, as it stands, it's competent. It's fine. It does what it needs to do. But for what Toy Story brings, I think that that sense of emotion, that sense of depth, that sense of just pure resonance, I didn't really get it here this time, and I wish I did. I got it in little spurts, but not to the extent of what I had gotten before. So I mean, we'll see how this. I mean, would not be shocked at all if we get a sixth film. Just given how these movies do, I would not be shocked at all. But you guys, let me know your thoughts on Toy Story 5 if you guys went out and saw it. You guys' thoughts on the Toy Story series as it stands, well over 30 years now. I think it's 31 years to be exact. Or 31 years, But yeah, let me know all your thoughts about Toy Story in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.